The most dangerous phrase in business is, "We have always done it this way." Nothing kills innovation faster, nothing strangles creativity more tightly. When is the last time you heard someone say, "We've always done it this way"? It was probably said with very good intentions because it's really synonymous with, "If it ain't broke, don't fix it." In the hectic day-to-day business world, relying on tried and tested or tried and true approach is often a harmless, natural course of action. However, resting on your laurels is often about deceiving yourself, a last-ditch effort to remain relevant. Simply relying on past achievements can lead to stagnation. Now, stories about the demise of Kodak, Nokia, Blackberry and Blockbuster have been done to death and probably feel like wallpaper every time they are shared now. Hi, welcome back to Stories at Work, a series where I share real stories from across the world that you can use when you want to drive home a business point. Our website, www.storyworks.in, already has over 100 stories, and we are adding one every week. Let's start today's story. Compared to all the Kodak Nokia stories, today's story is a new and more human one, which you can use to evoke discussion and thought about the requirement for innovation and disruption. And yes, when it rains, it pours. And today's story is again an apocryphal story. As I mentioned in the previous episode, an apocryphal story is a story that is probably not true and has never happened, but has been repeated often. But when messages from such a story is powerful and when it is a very small percentage of all the stories that you tell in business, I think it's acceptable. Now, I read the story in 2012 when I first started dabbling in business storytelling. Mark Shank from Anecdote had written a blog about the same. Mark had heard the story from a taxi driver. Apparently, the taxi driver had earlier worked as a car salesman at Toyota, and he had heard this from a sales trainer called Tom Hopkins. Talk about the power of stories. Good stories are eternal and spread far and wide. So here's the story. Now, many years ago, Tom Hopkins, a very renowned sales trainer based in the US, was invited for dinner by his future mother-in-law for the very first time. Now, she was preparing a roast dinner. Now, as she readied the lamb to roast, for the lamb to go into the oven, Tom watched her cut off the shank and throw it into the bin. Now, the shank is the portion just above the knee, which usually contains less meat and has more sinewy fibers. Now, his future mother-in-law then placed the tray in the oven. Now, Tom loved that portion of the lamb that had been cut off, and so he was bewildered. He asked her why she did that, and her reply was, "We always do that." He didn't say anything else as he didn't want to make a scene, especially as this was his first time that he was meeting her. Now, a year or so later, his new wife was preparing a lamb roast. Now, just as her mother had done previously, Tom's wife removed the shank and disposed it. Unable to contain himself, he asked, "Why did you do that?" And her reply, "We've always done that." But he persisted and said, But why?" And she said, "I don't know. That's what our family has always done. That's what my mother has done. That's what my grandmother has done. And that's what I do." Now, years later, Tom and his wife were visiting his wife's grandmother in her home where she had lived for nearly 50 years. She too was preparing a lamb roast. Tom watched her remove the shank and throw it into the bin before placing the tray with the rest of the lamb in the oven. So he politely said, "Forgive me, I don't mean to be very rude, but can you tell me why you did just that? Because even my wife and her mother just does that." She said, "Of course I can. This old house could fit only a very tiny oven, and I can't fit the entire roast with the shank still attached into this tiny oven." Now, the grandmother did something out of necessity. The mother and the daughter just followed with a belief that that's the only way it can be done. What a thought-provoking story. Now, where in business can you use this story? Now, when you're trying to get the team or the organization to question the status quo, when you're pushing people out of their stupor and out of a belief that if something isn't broken, it need not be fixed, this is a story you can use. Now, just because something is done in a certain way and has been done for a long time doesn't necessarily mean that it is the right way, or indeed that there isn't any better way now. I hope you liked this story, and if you did, you can find many, many more on our website www.storyworks.in. These stories are searchable using the business point you want to make. For example, if you key in status quo, innovation, disruption, or indeed, that's the way it is, you will find this story. So when you're looking for a story, go to our website and search for your keyword. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find a great story that you can use. The website and our YouTube channel has two playlists. The Story Bank playlist, which already has over, 75, 76 stories, contains stories like this, real incidences that you can share to drive home a business point or inspire people to take action. The other playlist is called Leaders Speak. That has videos where leaders have shared stories that have created opinions they have. Now, if you're sharing the same opinion with your team or driving home a very similar message, you could use that story. Thanks for listening. See you next week. Bye for now.